Hi, welcome today to our online academy. I'm excited to present to you today the Schedule for Success with Project for the Web. This is an amazing new tool that Microsoft has come out fairly recently with, and there's a lot of questions around how to make this work for you in terms of what are the pieces, the processes, as well as best practices of how to get started and how to take advantage of these. So, as you know, we've been working in the project management field, and myself certainly love and enjoy teaching these type of topics. So, Advisicon certainly is centered in learning both what's current, what's future, as well as applying things that might say, you know what, maybe the old school approach is best, and you can leverage a balance between that methodology and technology. I'm Tim Runcie. I'll be your speaker today, and been doing this quite a while as a project MVP and certainly as a trade practitioner. I actually get to work with a lot of different technologies, and it's been fun to kind of watch this product get developed by Microsoft, get turned on and turned loose, and then begin to watch it kind of mature and grow. It's almost like having a toddler and helping it kind of mature through the process. So, today we're going to cover some key things. Number one, we're going to first of all understand the direction. Where is Microsoft going in terms of the intent for what's called Project for the Web? This is important because there's a big ecosystem of tools out there. And what you need to do is find what is the right fit for you and your organization that will help you go through. Again, I'm going to do a little orientation. I'll get right into the technology and show you how to kind of get oriented, set up, start building and managing and succeeding with Project for the Web. Or in some cases, we call that P4W in terms of short. The best practices are certainly something that you always want to consider, regardless of what tool or technology that you typically work with. And I think that'll be helpful in terms of the pieces that we use in both building schedules with other technologies, as well as this Project for the Web tool that's now available for both commercial, nonprofit use as well. As we dig in there, we're going to have a little bit of fun and then certainly open it up and talk about templatization as well as dashboards. There's some great report packs that are just sitting there waiting for you to connect. And as we look at that overall strategy, it's important for you to know that if this is the right tool, the job for you, how do you get in, get out, and get back to work, but also set yourself up for success. So as we go through and thinking about where are the project technology options, there are plenty of things certainly to look at. And I love this quote here. It says, technology will not replace great teachers, but technology in the hands of a great teacher can be transformational. And I think that's so true, not only as a project program or portfolio manager, but giving somebody the right tool for the job makes a huge difference. So yeah, I'm sure you've been in positions where you've tried to use maybe something that was too heavy or too light for the job. It really makes that a little bit hard to work with. So let's talk about the direction that Microsoft's going and again reaffirm the value of using project technologies. So if we think about the project management connected systems and platforms in the entire ecosystem, it can be overwhelming. Some organizations, we're talking about managing people and talent and jobs and work. We're also being able to take a look at IT service requests, or perhaps we have large projects that we're generating. We might have vendors that we have to schedule with and calendaring. Of course, there's a lot of communication that goes along with that, and then making sure that we have meetings and activities and artifacts that are created. And a lot of this can be overwhelming, but you know what? Most people are doing this day in and day out with or without project technologies, just using Office, Word, Excel. They've got file folders. There's lots of ways to manage this. As you see things transforming into what we call the metadata world or the mobile world, the idea is that we actually have information that we can mine. We can actually sort, filter, and group. We want to keep a high level of relationships in terms of communication, but at the same time, with VUCA events that have perhaps transformed the entire world, like COVID, suddenly people are saying, you know what, I can't just manage by walking around. So Microsoft's goal was to begin to drive these, not only just the tools and process and methodology pieces together, but to really create a platform of opportunity in terms of the technologies. Now, this is where Project for the Web starts to emerge. And we're going to talk about that more because it's important to understand that what you see today is not going away. In fact, it's going to continue to expand and grow. So as we look at the office side, Word, Excel, we talk about Teams, we get into collaboration, instant communication. Then we talk about, database storage or network environments. And then we think around, hey, listen, when a proposal comes in the door, I have a lead or an opportunity and I need to quantify that, but how do I begin estimating and planning? And then if that gets approved, I need to turn people loose and ensure that it gets done and then have values in terms of insights of, hey, listen, what did we do last time for that? So with all this information, this is kind of where the scheduling technology begins to come together into kind of one platform. And Project for the Web is designed to really help fast track organizations and people like yourselves to get in and quickly make those changes, but have earlier touch points into, hey, what are we trying to build and deliver? Who's actually going to work with that? All of these Dynamics 365, Office 365, project technologies, all of these are designed to kind of sit on this new platform. And it's helpful to understand that as these pieces to come together, from the dashboards and reports to the overall infrastructure to the ability for you to actually say, look, I'm an agile organization. We kind of pivot and roll, and we like post-it notes and Kanbans. How does that fit with what we talk about putting things into a database? Well, Project for the Web is certainly there. Now, the whole idea of task and work management is important because we get into the where we say, I need to manage what we're doing, who's doing it. But then there's times where we look at there's a lot of technologies that are being provided, from Outlook and OneNote to Microsoft To Do, which is now kind of embedded in terms of merging into Teams. And then we talk about maybe more evolved scheduling technologies or task or work management tools like Office 365 Planner. Well, Project for the Web still sits right at the hub of making sure that when we have time phased information, we can move away from, flat files, spreadsheets, checklists into something a little bit more dynamic in terms of, hey, listen, we have a series of connected systems. Microsoft intent is that while we might have task management tools in Outlook, or perhaps you're using simple planner boards, you've got kind of this agile environment, or perhaps you're even using embedded components like Jira or non Microsoft technologies, is that at some point there's this stair step that we crawl up in terms of moving one step at a time in the crawl to walk to run phase and leading into bigger and bigger projects. Well, Project for the Web was designed to actually provide a little bit of a stopgap in between what we call work management and then the full project program and portfolio management, which in many cases can scare the heck out of people in terms of, oh my gosh, look at all these other things that I need to manage, earn value. Oh my gosh, you talk about predecessor successors. So as we dig in today, I want to make sure that you understand the direction that Microsoft is going to continue to invest in this platform. Eventually, this slice that we have in the world will expand and be the new platform that you can work with. So if you're thinking in the project life cycle in terms of, what are the kind of the tools that are available today to help me with, hey, I've got an initiation phase, or perhaps I'm kind of planning out the work that I need to do, or maybe I'm actually managing and tracking and doing the work as well as progressing, updating these, you'll notice that there's a blend between Teams and Power BI and Planner, and of course, Project for the Web and Project Desktop, and certainly Project Online. There's been in cases overlap between these. And while Microsoft might change the name of the license or the name of the tool, that Plan One, or what we call Project for the Web, P4W, the newest tool, is going to continue to expand its capabilities. And so as you begin thinking about what's the right tool for the job today, maybe it's not big enough to do what you need to do, but then again, depends on what you're trying to do. And that's why we want to look at how do we make that work for you. All right, let's get into taking a look at the actual technology, and I'll begin kind of walking you through not only just how to get started, but how to put these pieces in place for you as you go forward. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to bring up my Office 365 environment. And typically what we'll find is that we can come out here and literally, if you want to either add an app by clicking on add and pull into view, is that you can launch into several different tools here. Right now, what I've done is I've gone to the project landing page. And what's great about this is that if I'm whether I'm using plan one, plan three, plan five, or basically project professional or project online, or I'm using roadmap and the new product, project for the web, is that we really have this central area that just says, you know what, go to the tool cabinet, pick the right tool for the job. Up here, I can actually create roadmaps. I can also come down here and jump into Project Online at the very bottom of the screen there. It just says, not a problem. Let's just go ahead and do the full-blown project. We have templates. We have SharePoint sites that go with them. But for right now, if we turn of kind of like our favorites here, let's take a look at Project for the Web. And our goal here is to kind of walk you through not only how to build and launch these, but how do we actually take advantage of the timelines, of the views or the grids, and what's available for us to work with. So whether you're starting out in CRM or project operations, you're going to find Project for the Web completely embedded on the dynamic, basically Dynamics 365 side of things. They're beginning to use these tools to help you actually work, manage, and grow estimates that are much more accurate to what you're trying to work with. And again, in that grow up story, as we get started here, what we want to do is understand that when you spin up a project, this actually does the same thing that you do when you spin up a team, right? Microsoft Teams, you get a security group, you've got a place to put your files, and you have the same structure that we have with both Planner, basically Microsoft Teams, and of course, using this project for the web. They use the exact same behind the scenes structure for kind of organizing and managing that securities and permissions. Now, the database is really where we talk about where does that information go. So what I do is give you a quick orientation, and then we're going to jump out and I'll show you how you can build and get started managing in terms of putting these best practices. So I've grabbed a existing project here, and so up at the top, we actually have three views. And what's nice about this is that most of us have always worked either in spreadsheets. So if you're the spreadsheet kind of person, you literally can come out here, you can start typing, you can add items, you can click on these. And remember, Microsoft's goal is to kind of begin to eliminate the need for having a big ribbon anymore. And they put these ellipses here where you can click and drill into the details. So whether I want to promote or demote this as a subtask, or I can copy it, or if I just want to remove it or link this to something somewhere else, is you've got a lot of flexibility in your view. You'll also notice that we can expand and collapse the details. So again, we get this grid view, which is where in many cases engineers love to go, or myself, I like to see things in a very condensed order that says, give me an idea where this is at. And certainly as I'm in here, I can move these columns around to say, well, maybe effort and duration. We know those are two very different things, but start and finish, then who's doing the work and perhaps what bucket these might be in are all available for us to manage and work from. Now, if you're a timeline kind of person, that means that we start looking at the linkages between the two here. This is where you can come in and just say, I can see the grid. I can see the connected dependencies. Some of us, as old school project managers, remember the PERT diagrams where we used to have these kind of these boxes and we'll have early start and late finish and we connect these. In fact, I remember even putting, we used to have cork boards and we'd take yarn and string and we'd connect the pieces together. Well, we don't have to do that anymore, thank goodness, because, frankly, whether it's a post-it note that the sticky has fallen off and it drops on the floor, or perhaps, I just need to kind of move things around, this is much more dynamic. But visualizing what's actually happening in your project and the ability to begin to use simply a mouse or a touch screen to manage and increase the duration or change the dependencies between these is really part of that dynamic process of Project for the Web. So this is really where people get excited going, you know what? I don't have to learn a whole lot about some of the deep arts of scheduling technology. I can get in here right away and begin clicking on links or dependencies and say, hey, listen, this milestone, maybe I've got too many dependencies here. I can actually say, well, which one is actually the driving dependency here? Maybe I don't need to get permitting and link that directly. I can actually unconnect a few of the pieces as we get forward. And again, as I start changing durations, I can say, hey, listen, I can see where these things ebb or flow. And I have some of those dependencies that will adjust automatically, including me modifying the duration. So what's fun about this is that you've got this grid view, then you go to a timeline view, and you also have what's called a board, or in many cases we call it the Kanban board. Some people call it Kanban, but the idea is I've got this way to organize information by what we call buckets. I'll be showing you how to build these pretty quickly, but again, as we get in here, just drag and drop and organize by what you want to call it. Here's my backlog, or here's my to-do list. Here's a couple sprints that we're working through. Or maybe I'm thinking in terms of priority. What's next up? What really needs to get scheduled or assigned? Is it done or is it done? I want to make sure I've got a column I can flag these. Or maybe I need to get pre-approval before I put that on. But again, from a visualization perspective is that we have this nice view here. And then secondarily is that when you have a project, you can always start off with, what am I trying to do here? How am I managing? And I have my roll-up information. Again, don't forget that these little ellipses here, as you click on either the name or the title, or you drill into your details, allows us to kind of manage or control that. as well as I can actually come in here and look at the overall structure that I have directly around the information, including copying this out or exporting to Excel. We're going to see more and more options certainly appear as we begin working through here. Now, as I've given you kind of a little orientation about what's been set up here, let's actually get into some of the schedule building best practices, including the ability for us to kind of organize and think through a structure. So what I'm going to do here is notice I didn't ask me to save. I made some changes. These things save automatically. So a lot of what we used to have to do is build, save, draft, and then we'd publish it. All of this is just inherently being happening as you work in there. And you can have multiple people in co-authorship working in the same environment. Now that might scare some people who say, look, I don't want other people being in here. Oh, okay. Then what we won't do is we won't let them come in and edit, or we don't have to grant them a license. But the idea is that this is designed to be quick and efficient and allow as many people to come in and own their piece and progress those. So let me pop us right back up to the top here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a new schedule example here. So again, the idea is that when I come in, I can actually start out and say, look, I don't have really any tasks, but how do I want to activate these items? If you want to cut, delete, easy to do. You can also go through and use the undo key. Believe it or not, your keyboard shortcuts also work in here. So in terms of us building and organizing, one of the things that I would recommend is think about what you're trying to work through. So for example, we call this a WBS, a work breakdown structure. WBS. And the idea of a WBS is you kind of organize the work kind of by category. So in this case, this is planning phase. So if I want to change this to say, well, listen, what I need to do is I got a bunch of planning activities, right? And then I might have procurement. And notice I'm just typing here procurement stuff I've got to do. And then you know what I've got to do? IT and install activities. And then perhaps I've got training activities I need to have for my project. And then I've got documentation. So the idea is as I start organizing these is that inherently I'm going to come under each one of these in a work breakdown structure and begin organizing those. So what's great about a WBS is that if I'm thinking about what are some of the planning activities that I want, well, certainly I can click here and say, hey, listen, I can make this a subtask, or I could just insert a task right above it using the menu. And one of the things that we might plan is map out resources, right? Now, I want to indent this in. So, of course, this is referred to as making a subtask, or I could just press the tab key as I move through my columns or shift tab. But the overall idea is that I'm in a great place that just says, hey, listen, I want to promote. I can demote these, and I can also see that I've got some activities. Now, what I like to do is have fun when I work in here because a lot of times in Roadmap and other tools that will read this is that if you're on a Windows 10 machine, if you hold down the Windows key and you press the semicolon, is that we can actually drop in little emoticons, or we can do is find emojis that we can put in here. So if I'm thinking I'm trying to plan here and I'm thinking, hey, listen, I'd like to make sure that this is something that will be taking us up to the moon and back. I can put little icons to emphasize key phases or things that I look at. And again, these will show up in some of your views and reports because we're now using that Win 10 environment. So again, indenting and outdenting activities, let me just press the insert key. So if I'm in a planning exercise, I'm going to map out my resources. What I always like to do is also create what's called a communications plan. How do we communicate to our stakeholders? How often do we communicate to our stakeholders? Now, notice as I'm typing in here, it's not asking me for start, finish, or duration, but I can also drag that column over and say, well, listen, if I want to fill out my information here, let's just say, how long is that going to be? So in terms of map out durations, I might say this is 4, and I hit enter. Notice it defaults to days. If I say 4 weeks, I'll put in 4W. If I put 4H, I get into 4 hours. And if I want 4 months, again, 4MO, is it'll start actually auto-filling that for you. 4D, it'll kind of give you a little bit of a subtle hint exactly where it is. A lot of people sometimes go, I just need to track where that is. So if that's 4 days, I can just type these in here. Create a cremation plan. Might want to run that through a few stakeholders, but maybe say the elapsed time is 3 days. Remember, duration is elapsed time. And if I want to add a column that says, well, I also may want to track my effort, effort really is what will it take to get that work done? So while I might say, hey, listen, for mapping my resources might take 4 days, I might just say overall I have about 8 hours worth of work here. And communication plan is probably going to be about 4 hours with some conversations that need to happen. But I can begin to build both what is it will take to deliver this, as well as kind of manage the overall visualization. Now, stopping there with a WBS is great, right? The idea is that you can come in here and kind of organize these, you can expand and collapse the details. But typically, when we get into best practices, is that while this is helpful in terms of outlining what we're going to do, in many cases, this is not how we're going to manage the work. Because think about it, planning your resources might make sense, but then when I'm looking at, hey, what's happening with procurement, and maybe I need to purchase hardware, right? And then I might need to insert and then purchase software. This tells me what I need to be working on. But if I'm actually in a position where I say, you know what, hey, that's great, but maybe I'm purchasing hardware way in advance because everything takes so long to get anything shipped anywhere. Or hey, listen, Black Friday's coming, and I need to make sure I get this done well before I order software, which I can, instantly download. This isn't the order of what we call operations. It's not really how that schedule's unfolding. So, another way to think about how we organize and build our schedules is really not just organizing by function, which is a great place to make sure you haven't missed anything. But as you begin laying out a schedule, we may also want to switch to how the work gets done. Typically, what I call life cycle phase. So, if this is my planning phase, so I'll come back up here and say, hey, if this is planning phase, right? I might be working in something that says, well, this might be procurement activities, but honestly, with procurement, if I spell it right, is I may want to say this is my build phase. And so what I may do is say, well, listen, in the build phase, there's some activities that need to happen here. And maybe it's not purchase hardware and software. There's many more activities. But now you're not scrolling up and down between row 12 and row 87, trying to look at the things that need to get done in the order that they're going to happen. The idea is to help you be efficient as you start working from the top down. That schedule will ebb and flow as you begin putting these into place. So as we begin thinking about that, another way you can do this is switch over to what I call the board view. And now, whether you're using an agile approach or perhaps you're just trying to organize by functionality, you could do the same thing here. So maybe what I'm saying is, hey, what are my procurement activities, right? So here's procurement spelled correctly. And let's go ahead and add our planning activities, right? I can create buckets versus trying to create an outline and then reorganize these. So I might say, procurement, I got to purchase software, purchase hardware. Hey, I better map out my resources. I better create a communication plan. Or you might say, hey, this is sprint one, right? I might want to say I have certain activities I want to do here. And under sprint one, what are we going to have happen? Well, guess what? We're going to do a planning. We'll call it sprint planning. Let's call it sprint one planning, right? And then I'll type another one here just by hitting enter. And I'll just say, hey, it's a sprint retrospective. So for those of you that haven't heard of the term retrospective, the idea is, hey, let's talk about what worked well at the end of this period of time or end of this phase so that we don't wait to the very end of the project and where everybody's frustrated. We have a blame storming session. We want to learn as we go. And as I'm going through here, I can actually select these by clicking on them and it'll drill you right in here. What's the start date? What's the finish date? Do I have dependencies? What's my duration going to be? And again, you can always use the database here to kind of manage your buckets, including looking at adding custom fields or even talking about putting a priority level here. So some fun that we can have here is just kind of organizing that. And I find that this is also a best practice that says if you like WBS, great. Use your buckets to organize it. When I go back into my grid, I don't have to retool things. I'm already saying, hey, listen, when I come out here, I've got a bucket. I can actually see where these are fitting. And I can modify these directly as we begin organizing our schedule. Finally, as you start kind of putting things into place that says, hey, if this is our build phase and I'm going to have some other activity like we have IT and installation and perhaps training is going to happen under kind of our go live or post go live here. The idea is that I can come in and also say, well, listen, let me organize these where they happen. Now notice I type some duration so I can actually see these activities that go together. So if you need to actually be in a place that just says, you know what, I want to kind of build this out a little bit more, let's put in some days here. And I'll just keep this simple: 2 days, 3 days, 4, 5, 6, 5.5, and sprint retrospective should only take us, 6 hours of elapsed time to have the conversation. We begin to start just kind of brainstorming and playing. Notice it's not asking me to save or publish. In fact, we'll talk about artifacts here in a moment. But now when I go over to my timeline, I can say, hey, listen, you know what? Let's create some dependencies. I'm first going to go ahead and map out that I've got an activity here. Now, as I'm thinking about it, one of the other best practices is to add what we call milestones. So if I throw in at the end of a life cycle or a phase or a sprint, I might just call this planning phase complete. Now I'm working right here and I don't have necessarily a lot of columns, which is not the intent. But boy, any given time I can open up the details. In fact, if you're working on here, you could just click right on the little I for information, pop that open and say, hey, listen, the duration for this will be 0. And when I hit the enter key, it actually will turn that into a milestone. So as we go here, I literally can click, drag, and link these. Now, people sometimes say, hey, Tim, what if I want to start to start or finish to finish? And in a sense, this tool doesn't have those pieces added just yet. In fact, the 85, 90% of the time, people want to finish to start relationship. And so if you're going to need more and more complexity out of this tool, chances are you need to pop up one more level into, say, Plan 3 or what we call Project Desktop or Project Online. But this is designed to be quick and efficient that says, hey, listen, I literally can connect these together. I can see what the dependencies are. I might want to say these two are going to start at the same time. I'm going to start documenting a little bit later. In fact, as I put these together, maybe what I'll do is I can even just drag and move this back. Notice you can kind of look at the dependencies or the relationships and move these around. It's not prompting you with a constraint message or anything like that. It's just saying, hey, look, this is really for your team to be able to manage these together. And if you do have the dependencies, it is always much easier to work on these, including you can actually have multiple dependencies that might feed into an activity. So again, the overall idea is you can add them. If you click on any one of these anytime, there goes your details on the right. Wonderful. At the top here, the dependencies, right? I can see that this depends on training. That's good, but maybe not. I need that link, so I can always take them in or out as we work with our details. And this is one of the reasons I really love this tool is that I don't have to have people go and study for a PMP to understand, hey, look, I understand the order of operations. I'm organizing what needs to get done. Now what I want to do is start getting people assigned to make sure these things get finished, and they can quickly come in here and progress this. So right now I just kind of started with a simple schedule. And now what we're going to do is right now is we're going to go here and change and add some resources. So in this case, I'm going to add a couple people. So it looks to your environment saying, here's my Active Directory. There's Ken. And if I want to add somebody else here, I might say, hey, listen, I want to add Amanda to this activity. It's important for her to kind of oversee what's happening and what we're working on. I might also want to come back in here and say, listen, I think I might want Maria to help me out with some of the training work that's going to happen. Now, notice what I'm doing is I'm adding a list of people here. And if this is the first time that you do it, it'll actually prompt you to create a security group. Now, pause there for a moment. If I bring up Teams and I say, hey, listen, I want to make sure I have that Teams channel in place, well, that's the overall idea is that we are actually in a great place that says, as I'm working, I can always treat it the same way that I have our information about Teams. So again, as I'm working through an overall environment, let me just bring in my Teams window for a moment, is that, hey, listen, I have the same structure that says I can invite people. Can make this a private schedule, a public schedule. I can also put files or information around this and make it available. So inherently using that same security structure is that, hey, they get notifications, they get an email. In fact, in just a moment, I might even have people saying, what did you just add me to? As I put them on task. So here now I can just click from that list and say, hey, create a communications plan. Let's think about this. I've got it linked the way I want. Wonderful. Let's go ahead and get some resources on here. So I'll just kind of hover over to the right here. You'll see a little assign body or person or asset, basically a resource. And I can pick these and put them in directly. There's Ken. I'll have Maria kind of double up on this. And I can go through assigning these activities. Now, as we start preparing for work or demand or capacity, I've actually got good information that's showing up and a visible and available in terms of the pieces that we're trying to manage to. Again, when we talk about effort, we can always go through and just kind of assign what that work is. But the idea is that now, whether I go to a grid, I actually see who it is. If I go to my Kanban board, which is what I'm at right now, I can see due dates that may be slipping. I can also look at, coming back to the overall column and saying, well, there's a few more things I want to add, including hint, hint, wink, wink, is our ability to add new custom fields. Today, you can add 10 new custom fields to this, and there will be more. As this continues to unfold, Microsoft will continue to add more flexibility. So you have date field, number fields, you have yes, no fields that just allow you to group this or visualize that information. So in this case, I may want to create a field here and say, you know what? Mine's just going to be a yes, no. And I'm going to see for management review. I'll click on create. And now I've got something in here I can come in and say, yep, that's a yes. And while I'm working here, I can actually take these, I can highlight those. And the idea is that I've got the area that I can focus on. So whether I do a summary task or I do subtasks, I've got some information. You also get into the ability to highlight multiple items at the same time and cut and copy. So if you have a lot of these and you want to kind of promote or demote them together, no problem. Highlight those, right click on those. Let's make them all subtasks and I can indent them under my build phase. So with quick and efficient updates, this is really designed to be a touch and easily work through, providing 3 views to manage this. And as we look at setting both actuals or remaining work, people can come in here at any given time and just say, "Oh, hey, listen, I got my effort, but let's go ahead and put in maybe what our effort is." So if I come in and say, "What's our effort completed?" or if I'm looking at straight percent complete, that's nice. But maybe what I want to do is I want to parse out the work itself to say, well, it might be 50% done, but my effort isn't completed the same way. So in many cases, if I put these together and say, hey, I went in here and as I click on this activity and say, you know what, let's actually open it up and say, well, maybe that as I'm putting in here my completed effort is, let's just say I've got 8 hours, I've got 4 hours done here. And when I hit the enter key, you're going to notice that it moves to a percentage of complete as well as with a roll up. Now, if I want to change the differences, meaning I can actually look at the total roll up, or if I have multiple resources on here, what I can do is kind of add the work and I can also come back and tune remaining. A lot of organizations, I just tell people, says, hey, look, we estimated, we put in an effort. Now, what I want you to do is always tell me how much is left to do, right? We started with a single number. We'll continue to move from there. But I always want you to let me know what's done or what's not done. And if it needs to be reviewed by management, we can quickly flag those and have them in our views. So again, keep it simple, keep it quick, and that's the goal, which is if you're a nonprofit or a lightweight organization that says, for the $1 million and plus projects, we got the big stuff, but day in and day out, I need something more than perhaps what Planner's giving me. I need to be in a place for that. Now, if you create templates with this, saying meaning that, oh my gosh, you do the same type of work over and over again, well, remember, we can come back up here and we can always copy that project as well as throw it into Excel. So a lot of times what we'll do is we'll build a template. We won't assign resources to this. And what we do is we'll just copy that project and we can always come back out here and say, hey, let's give it a brand new name. Let's actually come in and rename this. We'll add a new group. Notice here I've got no resources on this. It just took the exact one that I had here, which is project for the wet example. And now I can come in and say, hey, listen, we'll call this phase 2. And when I hit enter here, I can actually say, yep, there it is. I'll rename that. And if I do decide to add more resources or at least not just change the owner, I've got some options. So again, for me is that I can build these, I can manage these quickly and efficiently. And now I've got 2 files, which I've actually built and I can work from. So building a template is helpful. Now, some people say, Tim, I love the grid. I love the board. I like being able to track it. I can see it. But I need to know across maybe multiple projects what's going on here. So what's great about Microsoft is that they begin to say, let's not reinvent the wheel in Excel and reinvent it in Word and reinvent it in Project and Planner and Teams, is we're going to be able to say what we can use Power BI and we can create report packs that are already designed or set up for us to basically visualize information that we have in our dashboards. So what I like about this is that there is a report pack available, and you can see here as I've been kind of playing around, I can come in and I can just go through. I can add projects. I can, visualize these and drop them in place. But again, if I want a quick dashboard of what's going on and I want to link back to some of these projects, very easy to come back in here and say, yep, we can actually drop in here. We can jump into them. We can see them. Of course, if you want to say, what's that Kevin guy working on? I can filter work activity directly by this. And now we start leveraging the power of Power BI in terms of surfacing our information or our data. And again, dropping these on a team channel, adding it as an app, very easy to do. Maybe perhaps you want a high level timeline of the work activity. So again, I can kind of set whether it's a month at a glance or if I want to drop into weeks at a glance, I can come in here, set that time period, and filter and manage these. Well, we haven't talked about roadmap in this session, but you may want to say, look, some of this information might be on a roadmap. I want to be able to pull these up and see them. Or perhaps I need to have an idea of what people are working on. Where's my resource dashboard? What's gobbling up all the activities, including what's past due? So I can look at what's Michael doing, what is the work activities that is scheduled on different projects. I can also go into what we call the assignments. And I really like this type of report is that I can actually get in here and say, you know what, as we're having fun in our environment, yeah, I need to analyze the data or I need to actually bring in these task two options. So again, I can look at by work or I can quickly filter and say, just show me what Michael's got going on here. What projects and what activities are we working in here? As well as maybe resurfacing back all of the tasks that need to be done and then saying, you know what, I only want to see the work that let's say it's Steve Clemente actually is managing here, or is it Tim Runcie? And I can actually use this to drive and visualize again that data quickly in a view. All you have to do is connect these report packs. They're existing, they're available. You can get into status in terms of future and late. So there is a great opportunity in terms of both looking at timelines and the overall work, et cetera, that's available. Even getting into what I kind of call the fly out views here, where you can actually go in and expand or collapse and look at information or details. So Power BI has been a wonderful addition to the family. It's part of that Power Pack. We talk about Power Apps, Power Automate, and certainly Power BI helping. But for you guys, as you're working in Project for the Web, these are some great things that you can work with and manage and work directly. All right. So with that in mind, kind of going back here is that you always will have a home landing page where you can prioritize what projects you want to see. There's that phase two example. I can click on here and mark it as a favorite. But the goal is to get you in, get you out, let you build and manage these directly. So let's kind of conclude today. This has been kind of a fun part of our journey is to understand, what are the pieces, how are they working, what's in place there for us to work from, and the structure of these technologies really are designed to say, hey, we can actually marry them together. So whether you start with that project home and you go left, which is lightweight project management, or you go to the right and you go to the full project online, they're all accessible to Power BI, even though the databases might be in two different places. And I know I have some organizations that say, Tim, we got both. How do we read all the work into one place? Well, guess what? That's where Power BI comes in. And there's some simple things that you could do to make that work. So with my construction background, I always think about building and engineering pieces as they go together. But the idea is I love about Project for the Web as well. It is designed not to be the big crane to lift the heaviest objects. It's really to give you a tool that's quick on the draw, lightweight, gives you the value that says, hey, I can pull those pieces together. And you have the same security group that you have in team structures. I can put files, I can have emails there. I even have Power BI reports available to this, just needing to look at those. And so as we get into summarizing our activities is that, you know what? Find the right tool for the job. If this one's too light for what you need to do, doesn't mean it can't be part of your portfolio, but the idea is that you want to pick the right tool for the job. And you also think about your culture. Are people prepared to learn all the things about doing project program and portfolio management? Or do they need to kind of grow up a little bit out of the checklist and Excel spreadsheets into, hey, listen, I need a little bit more structure that says if something slips, I can see the downstream impact automatically and I don't have to update every row in my spreadsheet. So as you begin thinking about that, plan out your artifacts. Where do your documents live? What kind of information you want to put in there? And then remember, outline that work. I prefer to use kind of a Kanban view that organizes that in terms of kind of the categories. And then I lay out the schedule in a life cycle, whether it's an agile or it's by priority of what needs to happen. That Kanban board or the board view really lets you kind of slip back and forth between those. Again, you can invite multiple people in here. You can basically send them notifications. I'm sure I've got a couple of emails now that says you've been assigned to a new task. So the idea is that from an easy to deploy licensing and training is that people could come in and own their sections, progress those, and you can actually step back and see that. Of course, you can templatize that by just copying your plan, and you can also use your Power BI to help you see the information. So again, from our perspective is we love technology, we love best practices, and if you need a little coaching or if you have questions, check me out on either Twitter, send me a note on LinkedIn, or certainly just reach out anytime with questions. But we want to make sure that you found this valuable and it's helpful for you guys to take advantage of some of the newer project scheduling technologies. I'm Tim Runcie, and I appreciate your time today. Hope this was enjoyable.